For North America, cops are in the news because they are the story.
I'm Molly Thomas in Erbil, Iraq.
They were telling us about the days just after the attack. The fear levels were just so high.
There is no drug cure, but you say there is a human cure.
That was metric. Of course, it's still electric down here.
7:02, we start with some breaking news. And
Breaking news at this hour.
8:19, some breaking news for you.
If an election was called today, in what way would you, Justin Trudeau, be vulnerable? Minister Norris came out quite candidly on the subject. I was listening to an interview on John Gormley. He said the Buckingham debacle was one of the worst decisions in Canadian Academy. A little harsh from, a minister that's handling the file?
Well, he was very, he wanted to be emphatic about the government's concern for what had happened there and the need to now have a path forward.
Do you want your minister speaking that candidly, I guess? It's a pretty bold statement.
I want us to get results.
Our correspondent Molly Thomas is back from being in Paris. Molly, tell us about walking the streets there at a time like that.
I would describe it as somber, but at the same time lively. On the somber side, you can't miss the flowers, the tributes, the pictures that show up at these memorials in District 10 and 11. You walk by, people, even on their way to work, will just stop and take a moment. But at the same time, when it's lively, part of French culture is to be out at cafes, it's to have a drink on a patio. People are still out and about. And I think the tough thing about talking about France is that Paris is the tourism capital of the world. And so you have, everybody's there. So it's really tough sometimes when you're out in the streets to figure out who's Parisian and who's not, who's affected and who's not. The Conference Board of Canada put out a report. They talked about dispelling myths, and they talked about how P3s across the country have worked for the most part and how they can work in a beneficial way. Do you ever think there is a time for P3s? U.S. President Barack Obama is in the German capital this morning. Let's go live to his speech from Berlin.
During that time,
breaking news out of Turkey this morning. Clashes between riot police and protesters continue right now. Now here is a live look at the protesters in Taksim Square. This is in Istanbul. Hundreds of people gathered on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see at the bottom of your screen water cannons spouting out water. Of course, this is to keep protesters away. Now we do know that officers have fired tear gas and rubber bullets as well this morning. This unrest was sparked by a police crackdown on a peaceful protest over the park 12 days ago. Today's move into the square by police comes after the Prime Minister agreed to meet with organizers tomorrow. And this is really the poorest of the poor, because the people that could afford have gone off and found places to rent.
But those people here actually either have nothing to begin with, or they had something there, back home in Nineveh, which is like a car or a house. And here in the Middle East, this is like a big thing. If you have a car, this is what you own. This is your own life. And they left
that all away.
Exactly. Those people here, they would beg you for $1.
Canada reconfirmed Haiti as a focus country this year. However, funding has not been committed yet. Do you think Haiti will always be dependent on countries like Canada? 6:12, let's go over to BNN. Patty Levitt-Reid standing by. Patty, everyone in Saskatchewan that is hoping to buy a home this year waiting on this interest rate decision today. Volodymyr Tomylin was performing as a musician in Regina. Now he's back in his home country in the midst of it all. Volodymyr, thanks for joining us from Kiev this morning. I have to ask, though, you're saying you were at the stadium. That's where a lot of the international leaders came to remember the 20 years of the genocide. As a Rwandan, is it also frustrating to see that people are there now, but they weren't there before? Fire officials say the wind really worked in their favor today. As you can see, that smoke is moving towards the southeast. That's away from the apartment building on the other side, away from businesses on that strip, and moving towards the industrial area of town. How do you look exactly the same? What are the tips? Honestly, we need to know. Some people might be looking at you this morning thinking, she's beautiful, she's successful, she's talented. But, maybe she chose that Sex in the City type lifestyle. 6:09. Well, as authorities look for clues into the cause of the deadly Quebec train derailment, the fire officials and the railway company are now blaming each other for the disaster. Well, the owner of a BC sawmill that was rocked by a deadly explosion 2 years ago has been slapped with a record fine of more than $1 million. Now, the fiery blast in Burns Lake killed 2 workers and injured 19 others. It's owned by Hampton affiliates. Well, deadly violence broke out between rival militias vying for control of Libya's main airport.
This was a scene not far from Tripoli's international airport. Now, today's fighting has killed 6 people and injured dozens more. All flights have been cancelled in that area. Libyan authorities have struggled to bring stability to the country since dictator Muammar Gaddafi was toppled 3 years ago.
Warm temperatures, I'm talking 30s. I'll have all those details coming up.
Beach weather.
Oh yeah, get out the Speedo. Woo!
Never the Speedo, Carrie. Never the Speedo. 7:10 this morning. Let's check in with our business dude over at BNN. Michael, of course, called me Dudette in our last hit. So, hey, dude, what's going on?
Well, what I'm looking at, very good. I like you.
So you're performing tonight, big performance coming up.
I am. I'm really excited about it, actually.
Any hints for us? Because we know your big song, Call Me Maybe, but is it going to be in rendition or something different?
I will say that style-wise, I was kind of inspired by, like, Cyndi Lauper.
We look around this camp, I mean, people have set up shops, they've set up businesses.
We hope and pray that the conflict will be over in Syria.
When many people think refugees, they assume that these people are living in refugee camps. But here in Jordan, the majority of Syrian refugees are actually living in host communities like here in Zarqa. Now, the problem with this is that services can be scarce and scattered. The UN says that 2/3 of Syrians living like this are actually in poverty. It was quite a sweeping speech, Lorna. Pope Francis addressed more than 100 heads of state in just under 45 minutes. And he had a lot to say to the international community, but at the heart of every single issue that he touched on was this cry for social justice. In North America, when we heard about Ebola, I mean, it's you and Dr. Kent Brantley that most people will think of first. Yeah. You talked about racism. I think a lot of people, especially if you're not from a minority here in Canada, you know, you don't think it exists.
Growing up with racism in Saskatchewan and Regina is just it's daily to this day.
Has anyone surprised you, Jacqueline, though, on the flip side of that? Of maybe you thought they would be coming at you maybe harsher and they completely surprised you or apologized?
I've never been apologized to for racism or discrimination.
You're married to a staff sergeant?
Yes.
So also in the RCMP?
Yeah.
Who outranks who? Can I ask that question?
I outrank him. Yes.
How does that work? I mean, who's the boss at home?
You might call the Lady Cougars a dynasty, the kind of team that makes you cringe when you see them on the schedule. A force to be reckoned with in the late 90s. Since 2001 alone, 9 trips to the national championships. That win stems from years of tradition, women that trailblazed the way back in the 70s.
Everything looks different, and they got the long socks. That was
yeah,
the
long
style.
socks, long sleeves.
What the heck are these? I don't know if this is for a child.
No, they're for practice shorts.
But this beast on the field is quite humble in real life.
7th tackle of the night for Jeff Knox Jr.
A little bit of a dream?
Oh, more than a dream.
More than a dream.
More than a dream to me.
Well, Molly, she loves to travel, and she was busy, actually. This was a couple of weeks ago that you went to Haiti on a 48-hour expedition.
Yeah, it was super fast, John, and like, oh man, we spent more time on the airplane than we actually did on the ground. It was 48 hours, the fastest my producer and I have ever worked, I'm sure. It was crazy, got to travel with 18 Canadians.
That's incredible. So in Haiti, though, what was it like when you got there? Were you concerned at all for your safety? Because you guys kind of had to get in and out and get your footage and your story and then leave really quick.
Yeah, I think the difference, I guess, with just journalists and traveling with a group is that you're responsible for the safety of all these people. So of course, security detail following us everywhere, armed guards with us everywhere. You can't stay in one place for a long time because you draw attention. So much to think about. But this is part 1 of my series, which is going to be going on throughout the week here. It is called Strength in Numbers.
A 7.0 quake may have rattled the Isle of Hispaniola, but it's the conscientious aftershock that woke up the world. Our first stop, Gonaives, a village 150 kilometers north of Port-au-Prince. And even outside the capital, away from the earthquake's immediate reach, a trail of innocent victims.
Orphans from
the quake. Most of them call me Poppy, or Father, which is just too much.
Breaks your heart a little bit?
Just a little bit.